Blog Talk Radio.
Wounded but not broken, with host Patrick Scroggins. As a U.S. Army attack helicopter pilot deployed in Iraq, Patrick faced a devastating crash, which resulted in him dying, losing a leg, and a slew of broken bones. Patrick's story of rehabilitation has helped others to overcome their own obstacles. Each week, Patrick recounts stories of inspiration and interviews guests who have overcome remarkable obstacles. This is Wounded but Not Broken, with your host, Patrick Scroggins.
Hello, everybody. Well, excited for this show tonight. Tonight on this show is a good friend of mine. He spent over a decade in the Navy SEALs. Very humble human being, great guy, a good friend of mine, and I can't wait to get this story going. Joe, his name is Joe Hahn. I'll introduce him now. Joe.
Hey, Patrick. Thanks for having me, man.
Hey, man. Thanks for being here. So, this podcast is, it's all about inspiration, overcoming adversity, being a strong-minded, strong-willed, and, I can't think of anybody better to relay that message than you. And so, let's just dive right into it, man. I mean, what made you, what inside you wanted to become a Navy SEAL?
I was actually kind of late in my life when I wanted to do that. I say late. I was in college, actually going to Texas A&M University on a pre-med degree. I was on my way to be a pediatrician when September 11th happened. At the time, I was probably 165, skinny, scrawny freshman, if you can imagine a freshman straight out of in college, and had no muscle tone or great gumption to become super fit in any way, shape, or form. But when September 11th happened, I was actually in the ROTC program at Texas A&M, the Corps Cadets. And me being from Texas, my first thing was, I'm still young and able. I need to fight for my country while I can. I can always come back to college. And so it kind of started my journey there.
So, but, I think a lot of us, a lot of the guys I've had on the show and me, I think it was all that it was that pivotal point for us. It was that, they attacked us on our homeland, and I think just being a patriotic American and somebody that was wanting to do something that was bigger than themselves, I think that just kind of sums it up. So, as a kid, you never had really any kind of interest in getting into the military or anything like that?
No, I was raised in foster care, so I know my family too well. But my last foster dad was a sergeant major in the Army in Desert Storm and an artillery group out of Fort Hood, and he talked about it a little bit, but I never really had interest. I consider myself pretty smart. I graduated third in my class at my high school, and my big thing was I wanted to be a doctor of some sort. And pediatrics I wanted to go towards that because in high school, I went to a super small school. So in high school, I used to do a lot of stuff for the elementary kids and stuff. And kind of had a natural knack because I guess I was always never going to grow up kind of mentality. But the kids there, I always enjoyed hanging out with them and interacting with them. And they'd always want to talk to me if the teachers were upsetting them or whatnot. And I was like, man, I could kind of make a medical career out of that, and pediatrics kind of was going for. But when September 11th happened, and it was kind of a split-second decision. Being in the ROTC program, everybody kind of talked about that. So I started doing some research. My first inkling was Marines, because those guys have a reputation and a legacy that's unlike nobody else. But I went and talked to recruiters, and I heard about special operations through special operations and special forces, the different branches. And so I kind of did more research into that, and I stumbled across books that were kind of hard to find, but about some frogmen in Vietnam. And it kind of inspired me because big thing about the Navy was scuba diving. And I always wanted to learn how to scuba dive. I love to swim. And I was like, man, don't pay me to learn how to scuba dive. I'm all in. So it kind of was what drug me initially to the teams.
Gotcha. So when you decided to take that step, so you went straight into the BUD/S program, is that right?
Nope. When I joined the Navy, they wanted us to have a rate because at the time Navy SEALs weren't as popular and mainstream. Actually, the first time I actually heard about Navy SEALs was from the PS2 game, SOCOM Navy SEALs. And that was one of the best games ever, I thought. I was playing that, and I was like, oh, what are these Navy SEAL guys? And looked into it, and, all the literature and research and whatever I could find at the time, being in 2001, 2002, the internet was just up and coming, so it wasn't like I could get on a computer and just Google it. I had to go to the library and talk to anybody and everybody that I knew involved with the military. Being with the Corps Cadets, you can get all the information right there about any branch of service. So that's basically how I heard about the team. I didn't even know what a Navy SEAL was until I was in college, and like I said, saw it on PlayStation 2.
So how did the pipeline? I'm sorry, that's kind of funny, but how did the pipeline start for you? So you went to the Navy basic training, and then after that, what'd you do?
So in 2001, I went and started talking to a recruiter. He kind of looked at me, he's like, "Hey, you got a training plan?" And I was like, "Yeah." I'm going to start training my butt off because I know this is a very arduous and tough selection process. So I was training like every day until I joined the Navy in October 2003. I had a delayed entry program at the time, especially after September 11th. Everybody wanted to join, and it was an influx of everybody. At the time, we wanted to be a corpsman because you have to pick a rate before you go to BUD/S then, because in case you quit, the attrition rate is 60-70%. So 250 guys would go in, and like 30 guys actually graduate the BUD/S program. So the Navy wanted to make sure that once you quit, that you had a job, so you wouldn't be wasted upon the fleet. So at first, I wanted to do corpsman because I was in the medical field at college. And they told me it was going to take me about 2 to 3 years before I even think about joining because everybody wanted to be a corpsman at the time. And I was like, well, I don't want to wait that long. And what's the shortest A school you got? So Navy has A school, like your MLS school or whatever. And they told me Master at Arms, which is basically military police, was 6 weeks. And I was like, sign me up then. That'd be cool because it'd give me some time practicing with a pistol and whatnot. Because before that, I never shot a pistol or a rifle because being in foster care, I wasn't allowed to touch that stuff. So first exposure I had to any type of firearms was actually in Navy boot camp. It was good times.
Well, it's interesting that, how quick life changes. You wanted to be a doctor to, going into one of the most difficult processes that anybody, a human being can go through. I mean, that being the Navy SEAL pipeline. And, I've seen you shoot, so you are a surgeon to this day. So that's it's pretty impressive watching you shoot. But so you get through the basic, and when did you go to BUD/S, and how much of a culture shock was that for you, or were you expecting it to be that difficult? So it wasn't too much of a culture shock. So like I mentioned before, growing up, I lived in a lot of different foster homes, and so transitioning to military life was reminding me of my childhood because I moved around. I moved around probably on average every 6 or 7 months to a different home. I was in foster care from when I was 5 years old till I graduated high school. I lived in over 50 different homes, a couple failed adoptions. It was kind of a dick dragger in itself. So the mentality part of it, the mental part of it wasn't that tough. It just kind of felt like another, I say group home because I lived in a handful of group homes with dudes. But these guys were not juvenile delinquents like myself at the time. They were grown men wanting to do some of the greatest work that the U.S. military can do. So it was more positive and upbeat, but it wasn't super culture shock. So I went from boot camp straight to my A school, which was only 6 weeks long, and then straight to BUD/S because it was in my contract. And the Navy wanted me to do because I scored a 98 on my ASVAB, and they we need to stick you on a nuclear submarine. We'll give you $15,000 for a sign-on bonus, and that was at the time that was a huge sign-on bonus.
And I was like, I don't want to be on a submarine. I want to be a SEAL. And like, well, we can only give you 2,000 because you have some college credit, but there's no initiative or incentive to be a SEAL. And I was like, I don't care. This is what I want to do. But they tried hard to sell me to do the nuclear thing, because I guess you got to be pretty smart to mess with glowing rods, like Homer Simpson.
Yeah. But, a lot of people probably don't understand or don't know that most of the guys in special operations and SEALs, Green Beret, Delta Force, however you may look at it, are all very, very smart, and if not have grad degrees and go on to get PhDs afterwards. I mean, you have to be smart. You have to be able to think and have common sense to do any of them jobs.
Oh, yes, for sure. Like they have a minimum with everything, with your physical and your ASVAB scores and all that stuff, but that minimum just kind of gets you looked at, especially nowadays. If you show up to a recruiter and say, hey, these are my times for run, swim, and pull-ups and push-ups and stuff like that, and if it's barely over the minimum, they'll kind of laugh at you, because the way people prepare for that thing is they want to try to blow it out of the water. So the numbers they have to be competitive. I mean, even back in 2002, 2003, when I first joined the Navy, the guys that were there was competitive. Like if you did the bare minimum as far as pull-ups and push-ups and the physical test, and your ASVAB's kind of low, you kind of had a target on your back the minute you walked through the quarterdeck on the Bud's compound.
Right. I mean, the mentality of everybody going through that is not to be average, not to be minimum. It's to be the best, and that's why it's so competitive, and that's why everybody pushes everybody, and it's just a different mindset, which that's what I want to talk about. So that mindset that you have to be in, take us to Buds, and not a lot of people probably are super familiar with Buds, more now than they were back then because it's so publicized, but that mindset that you have to get in, it's not something that's really taught. In my opinion, I think you're born with it. You can either overcome the adversity and you can suck it up, and that day is going to end and you're going to move on to the next one, and it's not going to last forever. But some people don't think like that. And so did you think like that initially? And, that just talk about that mindset that you have to make it through a program like that.
Oh, man, it's different for each guy. Because they've done so many psychological studies on the guys that have gone through Buds, made it through Buds, guys that have quit Buds, and it's such an enigma on that whole key, I guess, because everybody's like, what's the secret to Buds? How is your mindset? And it's like, for me, I established my mindset at an early age. Like I was really driven growing up after middle school. When I got to high school, I became really driven. Because believe it or not, when I was at this one home, I was a sophomore in high school, and the kid that graduated that year when I was a sophomore, who was another foster kid, the foster parents, as soon as he graduated high school, they drove him to the bus station and dropped him off. And I was like, that kind of blew me away. I was like, man, if they did that to me, I wouldn't have nowhere to go, because at the time I had no relatives, no family really that I was involved with besides that home. And that home I was at the time wasn't a very good home. And so I was like, hell, I got to get my stuff together and start making a plan for my future. So that kind of led me into getting into Texas A&M and kind of establishing a plan. But before that, I didn't really have a plan as far as life goals and whatnot. I was just kind of a selfish teenager that lived for the moment, like we all do. And kind of seeing some of that stuff and processing that made me kind of get self-driven and whatnot. Now, when I got there, the big thing that was kind of inspiring was just guys' mentality on who they wanted around them, which is a big thing, right? Like the instructors, they knew that in a year's time, the guy standing in front of them could be next to them in Iraq or Afghanistan. And they wanted to make sure that the guy that they're making it through training was literally the best that they could offer. They didn't want anybody that was the gray man trying to blend in, or even the guys that are lowest tier of the guys that are barely performing or trying to skate by. And there was guys that were physical studs that were going through Buds. We had an Olympic swimmer he crushed us all during the swim, did really well during the runs and whatnot. But he was he wasn't a team player. That's why they call it the SEAL teams and not Navy SEAL operator course, you know?
Yeah.
Everyone knew there, once you get there, it's explained to you, like, hey, look to your left, look to your right. By the end of this training, those guys will not be standing next to you. And it's not because they aren't man enough. It's because those are the people that didn't have what it took to be at war at the highest caliber. So that was something that encouraged me, I guess. You know, it's like, man, I'm about to be surrounded by a bunch of awesome guys, and the team mentality was something I was drawn to just kind of with my upbringing, whole team camaraderie and basically the family kind of attitude everybody had. So
right.
when I got to Bud, you know, it sucked. You know, you're barely sleeping, you're up all the time, you're always doing stuff, and I wasn't the strongest, the fastest, but I was definitely one of the guys that put out every evolution. So.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, there's no give-me's, like you said. I mean, it's you got what they're looking for, or you don't, and you got to be well-rounded. But that being said, we're going to take a word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to dive into more of the BUDS training, and then after that. So here's a word from our sponsors. We'll be right back.
So put your weapon next to mine. Put your weapon next to mine.
You're listening to Wounded But Not Broken with host Patrick Scroggin. We will be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Hey, right on down the line. Come on over. Come on over.
My father was the best truck driver I've ever known in my life. Like a family tradition.
I'm a truck driver myself. I drove around the state with my cat.
To be the truck driver, you not just only see where you go, you see the world in the larger perspective.
This is a really good time to be in the trucking industry. The dispatchers get good loads for them. The equipment is very new, and then it's very reliable.
At GTS Transportation, we make dreams come true by employing truck drivers, dispatchers, mechanics, and many other occupations. Consider joining our rapidly expanding team where we put quality, human dignity, and respect back into the workforce. Contact us by visiting our website at gtscarrier.com or call us at 847-754-4667. That number again, 847-754-4667.
Dallas Corporation and Dallas Logistics, a proud supporter of the Veterans Radio broadcast for over 15 years. High-quality printing services and warehouse distribution have been our hallmark since 1985, serving Fortune 100 companies for over 35 years. Check us out at www.dallascorp.com.
If you are one of the 20 million veterans who served in the United States military, then this message is for you. During your time in the service, you might have experienced conditions and mishaps that have, or will have, an impact on your health and quality of life. Sometimes it takes years for these conditions to manifest themselves. Most veterans ignore the early warning signs and therefore miss opportunities that could have improved their health or extended their life. It is important that you identify underlying conditions early while you have a chance to make a difference. The VDAC software was created to help you identify presumptive service-connected conditions as well as assist you with filling out any of your VA disability forms. Not every veteran wants to file a claim. However, knowing what health issues to be aware of is an added benefit of living a long, healthy life. For those who want to file for their VA disability, the VDAC application greatly simplifies and expedites this process and therefore produces a perfectly filled out VA disability form with supporting material.
For more information, go to nifv.org. Again, that's nifv.org.
The goal of VDAC, the Veterans Disability Application Caddy, is to empower you, the veteran, with a quick and easy tool that aids you with filling out your VA disability forms.
Welcome back to Wounded But Not Broken with host Patrick Scroggin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We're here with Joe Hahn, He's a retired Navy SEAL. We just left off with Bud's training, and Joe, it's something I like to get different perspectives on, because I get asked the question all the time when I do speeches or whatever it may be of, what's your mindset? How do you get your mind to where you're not going to quit or whatever? And I really don't have a good answer other than that it's just wired into me. I will either pass out or die before I'll quit doing something if my mind's set on it. And so I don't know how you would explain that. Do you have a better way of explaining it?
No, that's pretty much sums it up. I mean, that's why they call it mindset. It's what you're setting your mind to, right? How bad do you want that end goal? Being a Navy SEAL and being in the teams was something that I wanted more than anything else. It was the only thing in life that I can envision myself doing. It was that I couldn't think of. Before I joined, I was in college driving buses and working at the chow hall there at the campus. When I was going through BUD/S and wanting to do that, I didn't even think about how cush my last job was or anything. It was just like, hey, my end goal was this, and I'm going to accomplish that no matter what it takes and how long it takes.
Yeah. So what was the toughest part of BUD/S for you, do you think?
The toughest part of BUD/S is when I got hurt and rolled back at Hell Week. So I started in class 251, 250, sailors show up to, they called it in-dock phase at the time. Everybody's getting ready to basically spend about like a month or so till everybody gets there from their different duty stations and boot camps and whatnot to class up, and you're basically learning how to run with the boat on your head, how to do log PT. It still sucks, but it's not as mentally strenuous, and the instructors aren't yelling at you as much. It's not it's not a screening process at the time. It's more of a, hey, this is what you're expected to do. And then you start first phase, and first phase starts 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. They wake you up and they beat you on the grinder for it seems like forever, but for a few hours, getting wet and sandy, running down the beach, and then you finally, 4 or 5 hours later, you're actually barely sitting at breakfast. And each day, the instructor will basically read you the schedule for the week, and it takes a good chunk of time, and they post it everywhere because it's a lot. It's the amount of activities and different training evolutions are there, A, to prepare you, but B, they display that and tell you that to kind of see how strong you are mentally. A lot of people start doubting themselves, and they'll get in their heads, and that was the biggest thing I saw. Like I mentioned before, we had an Olympic swimmer in our class. He made it about the first week of first phase, just because once you start doubting yourself, you kind of start thinking that you can't do it, and then you'll think of other options that you can do instead, and they make it easy to quit. They got that bell everywhere, and once guys quit, instructors aren't yelling at you anymore. It's more of a, hey bud, it's all right, shake it off, and you get a blanket and a big old California burrito from the burrito shop over there in Coronado, and they make it so easy to quit for guys and tantalizing for guys that are there. They want to make sure that you're there and you really want it. So all that stuff wasn't the mental aspects and games of it weren't too tough, but I got to Hell Week, and the log, we were doing some log PT, it was about Wednesday, and it hit my shoulder weird, and so it did something to a nerve in my neck, and my arm went completely numb. I couldn't feel it. And so I'm trying to do log PT with one arm. And at first, my BUD/S crew or my boat crew starts yelling at me, stop ducking boat, stop being a pussy, you put out or quit. And instructor pulls me aside, and they're trying to make me do bear crawls, but I'm doing like a one-arm bear crawl because my arm just doesn't work. It's like, ended up pinching a nerve real bad. But at the time, they were just like, hey, you could have severed it. We're not sure yet. We're doing some MRIs, but we're going to do MRIs, and then you'll probably get rolled out of BUD/S and go back to the fleet. And that was probably the toughest part of BUD/S, I'll be honest with you, just because I felt pretty much defeated because it was something that was almost out of my control. Injuries like that, guys kind of suffer with shin splints and broken bones and whatnot. But I try to talk to him like every day and say, hey, that'd be something I can do. And then it coming back saying that it was just a pinched nerve. It wasn't anything severe. They said they'd have to monitor it because sometimes those pinched nerves, I don't know, some older guys will probably get this, but you pinch a nerve, it could be, 6 to 8 months before you feel anything. It could be a permanent process depending on what the nerve did when it got pinched. But mine, fortunately, was only like a week or two. And due to the fact that, obviously, since I got rolled out of Hell Week, I had to start with the next class. So they immediately rolled me back to the next class. And so I had to start day one, week one of NDOC all over again, even though I'd been in the process for about 4 months at the time.
Right. And I mean, that's kind of the epitome of what they're looking for, right? I mean, you're not ever going to, if something happens tragically and you get pulled out, that's like you said, that's out of your control, and that probably hurts worse than anything. But that mindset and that being well-rounded, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for people that will absolutely put everything aside and because they believe in it, and it's the pride, it's the attitude, right? It's just that being well-rounded.
It's definitely the mental, like you said, the mindset they're looking for mostly. Guys will have the mindset to perform and get stronger and better. Like you can get a guy stronger, faster, better by working him out and doing the right techniques. We don't need the superhero, the Superman right off the bat. We need the guy that can, no matter what, determine quit won't quit because there's situations. When I was going through Rescue T after Buds is when Operation Red Wing went down, and obviously that motivated me more to be there and to take the fight to the enemy. But one of the biggest things that they talked about, is never being out of the fight. And they wanted that mindset. No matter what, they want you to remember you're going to get injured. You're going to be in some hellacious places overseas. You're going to be overtaxed and underslept and underfed. But they want to know that A, your body can do more than what you think you can, but B, that mindset needs to be there because sometimes I see people, they get too tired or something, and they'll just kind of quit before they even get done with stuff. And my kids kind of do good. Sometimes I got 3 little boys, and I have to encourage them, like, hey, you think you can't go any further, but you still got a couple more steps in you. That was the biggest thing that got me through Hell Week, right? Hell Week starts like any other week where they tell you exactly what you're going to do, but they do all that before they put you in the tents. And they wake you up. It's probably super early on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Sunday morning. And you're going for days without sleep. And the biggest thing is I try not to think about if I'm going to make it to Friday. I just start off with I'm going to make it to sunrise. I'm going to make it through the day. And then once that starts getting tough, you're like, man, I don't know if I can make it to the day. The next thing is I'll make it to the next meal, and then I'll kind of weigh my options and see how I feel then. And then I'd make it to the next meal and be like, oh, I'm good, keep going. And then, towards the end of Hell Week, it's even tough. You're like, man, I got to make it to the next evolution, because you'd have 4 or 5 evolutions of different things before you got to your next meal. God, by Thursday or Friday, you're trying not to think about, man, this evolution's never going to end. So I got 10 more steps in me. So if we were running or doing some type of evolution, I'd make it 10 more steps. I'd count to 10. And let's start over and count to 10. And that kind of has always stuck with me through everything. A lot of the stuff that I've been through afterwards and stuff like that, it's just always like, hey, you know what? If I can make it to the next meal, I should be good. So, so the biggest thing is making those, eating that shit sandwich just one small bite at a time, and making those obtainable things and keep pushing forward.
Yeah, and that's kind of what started this whole thing, a little bit ago when I said it's the mindset. You either have it or you don't, and some people don't, and that's the one thing you can't teach. So that's sounds to me like that's what they look for. They're looking at the mindset. They can teach you everything else, and everybody has it inside of them. Just not everybody knows how to tap into it, I don't think. And so, and that's the thing that sets you guys apart from everybody else. You tap into it better than anybody, and and that's awesome. But so you graduate buds, had to be one of the proudest moments of your life, I would guess, up until that point.
It was exciting. I can't remember exactly. It was August 2005 when I completed the initial buds pipeline. August 2005 is when I completed SQT. So I finished February of buds, and you transition immediately into SEAL qualification training. They established that to kind of get it more streamlined for guys going through buds, because before that, in the 90s, guys would finish buds, they'd go to a team, and the guys would call what they call STT, which is basically before you get your trident. You'd have to earn it at the team, be there a year, and some of the older guys would basically bring you into what the team tactics were. Since the war kicked off, everybody didn't have different areas of operations, different AOs. So back in the 90s, the teams had each team had its specific area of operation. So one team would be Arctic, kind of almost like the Army SF groups. 5th group had mountaineering and whatnot. Teams had the same thing. They had a mountaineering group. They had a scuba diving group. They had a jungle group. It was all kind of spread out like that. So that at any time something kicked off, a team specifically trained in the area would go. But when September 11th kicked off, everybody won. So everybody kind of came, everything encompassing and rotating to the teams. So they wanted guys to have more of a baseline before they got to the teams. So SQT was just more training. You just wasn't as much of a screening process, but more of actual training. Like, hey, this is what you're going to be doing. There wasn't really anybody that quit. There's some guys that got dropped during SQT, but you're kind of past the whole, hey, we're trying to make you quit phase. They want to make sure you're good to go. So when you get to the team, you have some type of baseline of being in the SEAL teams.
Right. So it's more like of a professional environment. Now you're a professional. Now you need to live up to it. You're out of the baby phase or the Overwatch phase, but now you're held accountable to everything, right?
Yep. So a guy named Dick Couch wrote about it. It's one of the first books that came out during my generation. It was called The Finishing School. And that's basically what it is. It basically, before you get your trident, when you finish SQT, that's when everybody kind of get their trident pinned and you kind of go jump into Coronado Bay and then it used to be not a huge thing. Nowadays, it's an actual ceremony and whatnot. But back in the day, we stood in a boat barn in the SQT training area. The CEO of NSW came and pinned us all. And then we all kind of got wet, and then we all, had a great Friday night. But that was right before we went straight up to Alaska and started doing winter warfare training. But yeah, that was one of the greatest days of my life for sure. It kind of made me more proud in a sense that during buds, I found out that my real uncle was a team guy in Vietnam at SEAL Team 1. So during second phase, it was a dive phase, they would have what they called a legacy beatdown. So basically, if you had any family in the teams, they'd pull you aside and they give you a little extra attention. So second phase is after Hell Week. They usually do it, I'm not sure if it was after pool comp or before pool comp. Pool comp's an evolution in itself that definitely fuck fest. But anyway, so they take me aside and they're beating me and, with all these other guys, with, the dads and uncles that were team guys or master chiefs in the team at the time. And I'm all confused. I'm like, I don't have anybody that's in the teams. Raised in foster care and, considered an orphan. I don't know anybody. And the instructors are like, there's one other Hahn that's been through the program, a guy named Ronald Hahn. And I knew a little bit about my family, so I was like, hi, Uncle Ronnie. Come to find out, that was my uncle and Team 1. And after a few reunions, I got to talk to a lot of guys that went to his Bud's class and went to Vietnam. He was an interesting character nonetheless. So it kind of made me a little proud when I did make it through again, or make it through SQT and get my trident because of that little bit of history that I learned while I was going through buds.
Right. Yeah, that had to be super special. And so we're gonna break here real quick. Word from the sponsors. When we come back, we'll start with Joe starting to be operational as a SEAL. And I will say tonight that this is going to be a 2-part series. We're going to finish it up next Monday night. But anyways, we'll be right back. Word from our sponsors.
Put your weapon next to mine. Put your weapon next to mine.
You're listening to Wounded But Not Broken with host Patrick Scroggin. We will be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Hey, right on down the line. Come on over. Come on over. What's that?
Attention, looking for semi-drivers nationwide. GTS Transportation of Burr Ridge, Illinois is looking to hire or partner with experienced CDL holders in every state. If you are going to drive, why not drive for the best? Whether you are driving solo, as a team, or as an owner-operator, GTS is looking to add you to their rapidly growing company. Become part of one of the most respected, driver-friendly, and successful transportation companies in America, where drivers are treated as royalty. Contact us at gtscarrier.com. Again, gtscarrier.com. Or call us at 847-754-4667. That number again, 847-754-4667. We would love to help you, which in turn helps everyone. GTS is an equal opportunity employer.
Dallas Corporation and Dallas Logistics, a proud supporter of the Veterans Broadcast Network for over 19 years. High-quality printing services and warehouse distribution has been our hallmark since 1985, serving Fortune 100 companies for over 35 years. Check us out at www.dallascorp.com.
If you are one of the 20 million veterans who served in the United States military, then this message is for you. During your time in the service, you might have experienced conditions and mishaps that have, or will have, an impact on your health and quality of life. Sometimes it takes years for these conditions to manifest themselves. Most veterans ignore the early warning signs and therefore miss opportunities that could have improved their health or extended their life. It is important that you identify underlying conditions early while you have a chance to make a difference. The VDAC software was created to help you identify presumptive service-connected conditions as well as assist you with filling out any of your VA disability forms. Not every veteran wants to file a claim. However, knowing what health issues to be aware of is an added benefit of living a long, healthy life. For those who want to file for their VA disability, the VDAC application greatly simplifies and expedites this process and therefore produces a perfectly filled out VA disability form with supporting material.
For more information, go to nifv.org. Again, that's nifv.org.
The goal of VDAC, the Veterans Disability Application Caddy, is to empower you, the veteran, with a quick and easy tool that aids you with filling out your VA disability forms.
Welcome back to Wounded But Not Broken with host Patrick Scroggin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Here with Joe Hahn, just finishing up buds and SQT, and he gets through that. He gets his tridents, and obviously, as anybody, it would be it's such a huge accomplishment. And so now, Joe, where did you go after that?
So first orders were SEAL Team 5 on the West Coast. And it was right when they got back from their deployment. So they were fresh from Iraq, and we were fresh from buds. And you probably hear a bunch of horror stories about guys coming into the teams and whatnot. But man, that first platoon of guys was they were awesome. They had an awesome OIC and ALIC. Some of the senior guys that were coming back were super stoked and motivated. And I learned so much from them just initially, just kind of being in their presence. That was my big thing when I was getting to the teams. The biggest thing is, mouth shut and ears open. It was, even though I just earned my trident and kind of passed that crucible and had that thing on my chest, I still feel like I was surrounded by superheroes. Those guys were larger than life. And sometimes my AOC would tell me on Fridays, he says, all right, done being a frogman this week, go enjoy yourself and have a good time kind of deal. And sometimes being around those guys, I would forget that, hey, I'm one of these guys too. I'm just as capable of calling myself a team guy because, I'm here with these guys. I'm not supporting them anyway and whatnot. So it was cool. And like I said, I was always inspired and kind of almost starstruck when I was around those guys, just doing workup and training and watching those guys, do their job and learning their job. Initially I was blown away. Stuff you don't read about in books for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as with all the special operations, everybody has their their niche. I mean, you truly you're standing amongst giants. I mean, you really are for what the guys have seen and done for this country. What you have seen and done for this country is nobody can really relate. You can only read about it in books because most of y'all don't and can't talk about a lot of it. So you get to that first team. I'm sure it's a different lifestyle for sure. Nobody probably would really understand some of the stories that you all do, the fun, But so how long before you deployed the first time?
So I was able to get a full workup in. So it was 14, 16 months. So like I said at the time, it was you deployed for about 6 to 8 months out of the year, and then you did a workup for about a year and a half-ish. So they had just gotten back from Iraq. And we're starting their beginning of their pipeline again. And so I got my Trident and got to Team 5 at 2005. And that thing with Team 5 and Team 4 at the time, they call them the holiday deployment teams. It was us on the West Coast. It was 1 and 5, and on the East Coast, it was, I believe, 2 and 4. So we would deploy during Christmas. That was the rotation that was in. So I got there in 2005, and then October 2007. 2007 was the first deployment overseas. So I got a full workup in and got to learn as much as I could with these guys before I went on my first deployment. October 2006, not 2007.
So when you say a full workup, just for our listeners, just when you say that, I mean, I know what you mean, but what can you explain it like?
So it's different for whatever unit and whatnot you're going through, but a full workup means you're not missing any of the training involved in that deployment pipeline. At the time, they didn't really have it broken down like they do now. So guys would neatly get back, and they'd have what they would call it like redeployment, but they're basically just de-jocking and decompressing and kind of looking at hard skills and bringing in new guys. Old guys would go to different training cells and whatnot if they'd been in a while. And it's just a big shuffle at first, and then you basically start at the beginning of your advanced training pipeline. So it'd be shooting schools. So at first it'd be like individual training. So you do like your shooting schools, your scuba diving schools, like advanced stuff, not stuff you do in SQT, but that's where you get the weeds of all the actual tactics and stuff that guys would use. And halfway through that, guys would start coming together, and you do like your platoon and troop size stuff where you train as a whole unit. So right before deployment, you're really going as a full troop and as a full team to different locations and different training sites and running full mission profiles. So we basically break that down. If you want to compare it to, say, a football season, right? You get the preseason, which is basically right after you get done with the playoffs or the Super Bowl, and that's where you start working on your individual basics, right? And then once the season gets started, and I considered our season as when we all kind of came back together and we'd start just getting ready to deploy. And that, game time is obviously the 6 to 8 months you're overseas executing missions. So that's what I put it.
So you're learning the unit SOP, all the way they do things, because everybody has their own niches and the way they do certain tasks. So it's funny that you brought up football, because I say that a lot of time, even when I speak. When you talk about the special operations of the military, you're truly talking about the less than 1%, kind of like the NFL. You're talking about the less than 1% of the populations, and I kind of compare them to in the abilities and mindsets. But it was just kind of funny you talked about that, or you said that. But so I really appreciate coming on tonight. We're going to stop here, and then next week we're going to pick up at your first deployment and how that was, and go on through the rest of your military career. And I can't thank you enough for coming on tonight and taking the time. I know you're a busy man, but so I hope everybody tunes in next Monday night to hear the rest of this story. I hope everybody has a great week.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Patrick, and look forward to chatting with you guys again.
You're listening to Wounded But Not Broken with host Patrick Scroggins.
My father was the best truck driver I've ever known in my life. Like a family tradition.
I'm a truck driver myself. I drove around the States with my cat.
To be the truck driver, you not just only see where you go, you see the world in the larger perspective.
This is a really good time to be in the trucking industry. The dispatchers get good loads for them. The equipment is very new, and then it's very reliable.
At GTS Transportation, we make dreams come true by employing truck drivers, dispatchers, mechanics, and many other occupations. Consider joining our rapidly expanding team where we put quality, human dignity, and respect back into the workforce. Contact us by visiting our website at gtscarrier.com or call us at 847-754-4667. That number again, 847-754-4667.
Dallas Corporation and Dallas Logistics, a proud supporter of the Veterans Broadcast Network for over 19 years. High-quality printing services and warehouse distribution has been our hallmark since 1985, serving Fortune 100 companies for over 35 years. Check us out at www.dallascorp.com.
If you are one of the 20 million veterans who served in the United States military, then this message is for you. During your time in the service, you might have experienced conditions and mishaps that have, or will have, an impact on your health and quality of life. Sometimes it takes years for these conditions to manifest themselves. Most veterans ignore the early warning signs and therefore miss opportunities that could have improved their health or extended their life. It is important that you identify underlying conditions early while you have a chance to make a difference. The VDAC software was created to help you identify presumptive service-connected conditions as well as assist you with filling out any of your VA disability forms. Not every veteran wants to file a claim. However, knowing what health issues to be aware of is an added benefit of living a long, healthy life. For those who want to file for their VA disability, the VDAC application greatly simplifies and expedites this process and therefore produces a perfectly filled out VA disability form with supporting material.
For more information, go to nifv.org. Again, that's nifv.org.
The goal of VDAC, the Veterans Disability Application Caddy, is to empower you, the veteran, with a quick and easy tool that aids you with filling out your VA disability forms. VBN, Veterans Broadcast Network, brings you Wounded But Not Broken, hosted by Patrick Scroggins. It lies within you to conquer your greatest challenges. Patrick tackles the stories of how others faced unthinkable odds and then at a pivotal moment, a change occurred within them that gave them the strength, attitude, and direction to excel beyond the greatest expectations. Listen every week and learn how it is possible to defeat the impossible.